Franco Porporino Jr. is the director and executive producer of Butler Under Fire. We're joined as well by Sheriff Mark Slupe of Butler County's Sheriff Department, and we appreciate both of you gentlemen being with us here today. Franco, I'd love to start with you. This special, which is up now at Fox Nation, approaches the one-year anniversary of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. I'm curious, what was your biggest revelation in putting together this in-depth documentary on the assassination attempt?
Well, first of all, Will, thank you for having me on your show, and it's always great to see you, Sheriff Slupe, on Zoom this time, but not in person. But to answer your question, Will, when I started this project, my initial vision was to create a historical documentary, something that captured the events of that tragic day in Butler. But as I got deeper into it, it really became so much more personal to me. And what I mean by that is traveling to Butler and meeting people like Sheriff Slupe and Helen Comparatori changed everything. They welcomed me, I will say, with open arms. And I can honestly say, and I'll speak for myself, Sheriff Slupe, but they really did become family to me. But I think what the world really needs to really know about this documentary and doing this is that there's a tremendous amount of responsibility that comes with telling a story like this. We wanted to make sure that it was done with integrity and respect for the people who lived it. And the truth of the matter is, this is not a documentary, for headlines or to get clicks. It's the human side of tragedy the world hasn't fully understood yet. And the way I look at it,
And we should,
as you said, Will, we're approaching the 1 year now. And the facts are the rally came and went, the Secret Service came and went, but there is still a community, a family, and a nation searching for answers 1 year later.
Searching for answers is exactly correct. Sheriff Slupe, I wonder what your reaction is today to the news that 6 Secret Service agents at various levels, by the way, of authority have been suspended under the DHS for what happened that day in Butler.
I've said this before. I prefer not to comment on it simply because, look, it's been a year. There's been many, many investigations. We've been part of those as being interviewed by the Secret Service, Homeland Security, et cetera, et cetera. And my feeling is that those at the top of this Secret Service made a decision based on the facts that they were given. So I'd rather not comment it simply because, too, if I were to discipline deputies for whatever reason, I'm doing it because of the facts that were given to me about the incident, and I make a determination on discipline. I am not going to say, oh, they should be this or that. I believe that the Secret Service, who's in charge of the Secret Service, did what they felt is best after the information they received.
And yet, the best wasn't good enough that day. The evidence is obvious. And so I'm curious, from your analysis, Sheriff, then what went wrong?
Obviously a catastrophic failure. He was able to get up on a roof, generally undetected. Citizens away from the rally point saw him, started calling out. I don't know to who. You get that from watching all the videos. And, by the time law enforcement actually saw him on the roof, he turned around, gunshots started firing. It was like that.
Not to cross-examine you, Sheriff, but it does seem like, according to your documentary here, Butler Under Fire, that there was information available. There was information available and being passed on in the documentary, I believe, Franco. It's the case is made that it was passed on from local.
Hour and 15 minutes.
Tell me more about that. Tell me more about that, Franco.
So what you're going to see in this documentary, which is truly exclusive, is you have the Butler Emergency Service Unit that was inside the AGR building with Commander Lentz in his communication post. This is the first time that anyone's hearing their story. So they are the ones that were communicating. Edward Lentz was the commander that day for the local SWAT units. He was all the information that he was receiving. Now, when I say this is, it's just not an interview in this documentary. We have all the radio comms. You're going to hear all the transmissions that happened as it unfolded. And what you will see is that at approximately 4:45 p.m., if I'm not mistaken, is the first time that someone spots. It was the Beaver County sniper in the AGR building that took actual pictures of Crooks and obviously passed them up the chain. Now, we do have firsthand interviews, not only from Commander Lentz, but from the whole entire Butler ESU team. And more importantly, I think, what you're going to discover in this documentary is that, and I know he doesn't really like when I mention his name, but there is a Butler ESU member by the name of Aaron Zalaponi that never really got recognition, but he's the person that fired the 9th shot. And technically, you will see from this documentary that it is alleged that Zalaponi, after he fired his 9th shot, hit Crooks's buttstock on his AR rifle and he stopped shooting. So he had another 20 bullets left in his chamber. So if Aaron Zalaponi did not take that shot, in my summation, in my opinion, I truly believe there would be a lot more casualties, because after Aaron Zalaponi fired that shot, Crooks never fires again. So there's a lot of things that really... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, okay, so you're talking about that communication process of an hour and 15 minutes and how information was passed up. And you mentioned what's revealed in the documentary. Why don't we do this? Let's watch a little bit of it together, and you can see how this is laid out. Here's a little clip from Butler Under Fire.
We're observing he has a rangefinder, and from their perspective, it looked like he was lasing the podium.
He was up against the building, believe he was looking up at us, and then he walked around the side of the building. We lost sight of him. Copy.
That escalated our level of concern.
Be on the lookout for a white male, blonde hair, backpack, on a bicycle.
I immediately contacted the state police sergeant, and I know for a fact he took that information and passed it forward to the Secret Service.
And the Secret Service, they were actually answering you?
I can tell you 100% that the Secret Service was absolutely aware.
All right. Pretty stunning clip there, Franco. I mean, you mentioned the timeline. So that first clip, the beginning of that clip, it's 4:45 when, I believe it's about 4:45 p.m. when Crooks is noticed and becomes someone of interest that everybody is watching. By 5:45 now, you have not just, post-interview footage from your documentary, but as you mentioned, you have the radio comms of them saying, hey, there's this guy on top of the AGR building or around the AGR building. And then you have the testimony there of it was 100% passed on to the Secret Service.
Unequivocally, that is 100% the truth. We also have radio comms when Commander Ed Lentz specifically says to his team that Butler Township and the state police are looking for him around the AGR building. That's, I would say, 30 minutes prior to Trump taking the stage.
So what happened? I put this to both of you. Let's go back to you, Sheriff. So what happened? If what, Franco says it's unequivocally true, you hear the testimony of officers in the documentary that it was passed on to the Secret Service. What then? What happened?
Right. Unfortunately, my deputies weren't in the command post with the Secret Service, but if what Franco says happened, which I believe because he's done a lot of research, then, it would have been incumbent upon the Secret Service to, radio call to whoever, look for a suspicious person. Or again, once the rangefinders come into play, once the rifle is out, where's that communication? When did they know? How did they know? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of questions. And honestly, I hope that the investigations from the FBI and the state police, Homeland Security, Senate Congress, I mean, couldn't believe the amount of investigations that occurred right after July 13th. We were inundated with questions, but I hope that those questions will be answered in this final report, which I haven't seen and I haven't asked for anything either, but it does come to question.
And Will, if I can,
well, let me follow up with this real quick, if you wouldn't mind, Franco. I'm going to come back to you, but Sheriff, because it just ties on what we said, Sheriff. What should have happened then, if that information was passed on to the Secret Service? We know what didn't happen, or seemingly what didn't happen, based upon the results. What should have happened?
Well, again, not knowing the Secret Service protocol, and I don't know at what point they call their code to get them off the stage. You have to understand that no matter what rally, there's always some goofball walking around suspicious. And let's face the fact: if the president was taken off the stage every time there was a suspicious person, he'd probably tell these guys, "Do not take me off the stage unless So again, I don't know their protocol, but at what point do they get him off the stage? I don't know. And of course, since everything happened, of course, we all say at a certain time he shouldn't even have gone out. That's the argument.
Right.
I think
back to you then, Franco. I know you had something to say.
I think one of the biggest challenges that day, and really knowing the story and going through all the congressional reports and looking at most of the testimonies that day, I think one of the biggest breaches that they had that day was that there wasn't one central command post. And I think that's where the communication breakdown truly happened, because you have Commander Lentz in one command post, and then you have the state police and the Secret Service in a different command post. Why did that happen? I don't have the answer to that, but I believe that, in a rally for a presidential candidate, I strongly believe, and again, I'm not the Secret Service or Pennsylvania State Police, but I really think that all the commanders and everyone making the decision should have been all in one trailer or one command post.
And I'll comment on that. In 2020, when the president, Trump, came to Butler, there was a central command post. Everyone who had a radio was in that room. My deputies were paired with Secret Service agents in certain areas. July 13th, I unfortunately was out of the county for the week. I came back Friday. My chief deputy did a great job working with the state police, getting personnel assigned. But then again, and you're right, there was a county asset in the command post. It wasn't a deputy though, okay. But then in October, when he came back, everybody and their brother was in the same room. And like Franco said, that is exactly not everybody should be on the same radio frequency, because it would be jammed packed. Everybody has their own radio, and there's verbal communications across the table beside each other of what's going on, keeping everybody informed.
Okay,
Sure.
So if I'm reading you guys correctly, Franco, what you're saying is, okay, you've got all this information coming in. Now, it's over an hour and 15 minutes worth of information coming in, and I'm sure it's not consistent. It's sporadic, and it increases in its intensity and obviousness over time. But you've got this information coming in, but it's never reaching the person in a cohesive or coherent manner that can say, that's a threat, immediately focus on that, either take him out. Because, by the way, he's not just I think to be fair, he's not just a crazy rally goer, right? At some point, he's got the rangefinder. I don't know when the rifle becomes visible, but even being on top of a building, these things I would hope and think are different than a regular crazy rally goer. And at some point, the alarm should have gone off and action is taken. That action, either not letting the president go on the stage, or I don't know what the protocol is for Secret Service, but at some point, taking the threat out, Franco.
Well, listen, I think one of the biggest things for me is, as this unfolded on TV, obviously I started bombarding Sheriff Slupe to just get access to do this documentary. And I will tell you, I think the most alarming thing for me, and honestly, I still remember it vividly, is that when I traveled to Butler Farms 3 weeks after the Trump assassination attempt, I stood exactly where Trump was standing, and I couldn't comprehend how close that Thomas Crooks was from where he was standing. Like, for me, it's like, now, the reason why I say that is I also attended the second rally, okay? And at the second rally, I mean, it was like Fort Knox, you couldn't get through. So, and at that particular time as well, he was not president. So for me, I guess the real question comes, why didn't he have that type of security on July 13th, the first time that he rallied in Butler? I mean, that's the real question. And I think the other question pertaining to communication breakdown is what really happened? And this is the question that I asked Commander Lentz, and you'll get an answer in this documentary, is what happened the moment that he passed up the chain to Pennsylvania State Police, the sergeant in the command post with the Secret Service? What happened after he communicated that there was a suspicious person on the AGR building? We do not have the answer to that question, but we do take a very in-depth look, and this is the first time that these guys are speaking. And I will tell you also, Will, that they're only speaking for one reason. And I recall, and Sheriff Slupe, I mean, you know those guys over at Adams Township as well. They did not want to tell their story. These guys are not about grabbing headlines and saying that we're the local heroes here. They only wanted to tell this story for one specific reason, and that was, if Helen Comparatori wants us to tell this story, we will tell this story. And that's why they're speaking for the first time.
Do you have an answer to the first question, Franco? Why there wasn't more serious or dedicated security personnel to President Trump at the first Butler rally?
Listen, I have one question, and it's a question that I've never asked, and I'll probably ask it right now on your program. But for me, if you see someone an hour and 15 minutes that's suspicious looking, right? Why didn't someone grab this person? I don't care if it's the Pennsylvania State Police, Secret Service, local Butler Township Police, the Butler SWAT guys that saw them. Like, I still can't wrap my head around why someone didn't try to, apprehend them. For me, that's the question.
But
it's like,
Well, I can answer.
I get that, but you also, real quick, you asked a different question though as well, Franco, that I do want to push on, which is, you suggested you didn't think his security detail was adequate the first go around at the rally, and you forwarded the question to us just a moment ago, Franco. Why?
I can't answer that question, but I will tell you this. I know for a fact, and Sheriff Slupe, you were at the first rally as well. I think you could answer this question. They had the second rally opposed to the first rally. At the second rally, they had semi-axles creating a perimeter around the whole entire, rally. There was, I think, 4 Secret Service to every person entering inside the rally. As far as the first rally, I can't answer that question. But for me, it was completely night and day from the first rally to the second rally. And I can't answer that question. I mean, that's, how they allow a presidential candidate to have, and Sheriff Slupe, correct me if I'm wrong, because you probably know more than me when it comes to the first rally. But from my understanding, there was only 2 sniper teams there on the north and south of the Red Barns. Other than that, I don't believe there was anyone else there from the Secret Service.
Well, first, it's
Sheriff.
my understanding that First Lady Jill Biden had come to Pittsburgh the same day. I don't know what her detail looks like. As we know, the president was a protected person at that point and had been since he left office. And I would agree with Franco. It was different from 2020 to October. I mean, obviously, these are the questions that the Secret Service has to answer and probably already did. But I'm just telling you that it was different. And I agree with him. And
Yeah.
one thing that I'll never forget is still in my mind that when we walked out from back the stage, when I looked to my right, the bleachers there were on the right, and there was this huge open hole, and then there was like a combine. And I thought to myself, where is, like Franco said, a tractor trailer, a bus, anything blocking that opening? Again, I wasn't part of the planning, but I turned around and started listening to the president at that point.
And Will,
Um,
I think what's also important is what Butler ESU states in his documentary is they really didn't have any debriefing from the Secret Service as far as, where they would be positioned or anything. So there's a lot of information, and I think no one can tell the story better than these guys from Butler ESU. And it's just not Commander Lentz. It's the timeline of events that we pretty much have throughout this documentary. And it's really powerful because when you take the interviews from these people that were there firsthand in the AGR building and you factor in the real live radio comms, you really get a broad picture on what really transpired that day.
Okay, just a couple more questions for you. Franco, you talk about the important role that Helen Comparatore played in the fact that so many others were willing to talk because she wanted to talk. We heard her in the clip that we just played from the documentary. Why did she want to start talking? Why did she want to share her story and her questions?
Well, initially, she was just inundated with everyone just trying to get, the story from her and get the exclusivity. And, I think what really happened is by spending a lot of time in Butler, because when I went out there, I really didn't have access to anything yet. I just sat down with Sheriff Slupe. We had lunch. And then from there, we built this level of respect for one another. And I will tell you that, Sheriff Slupe has a lot to do with, why the people in Butler had a tremendous level of trust, for me to tell this story. Because one thing that I wanted to be very transparent is that I wanted to tell the real, raw, and organic truth. And however which way that may have came out, that's what I wanted to tell. But as I spent so much time with Helen and getting to know Sheriff Slupe and, former Chief Kip Johnson from Buffalo Township Volunteer, where Corey was a firefighter, it was a story that I think Helen specifically said that, and this was honestly, Will, it was so like, I couldn't comprehend what she told me last week, but she said to me, the reason why I want this story told is because they were getting DMs in her inbox that this was all fabricated. Like this truly never happened. And, and I will tell you one thing. Well, I'm not sure if you know this, but we have something in this documentary that I think is going to really move the world. And anyone out there that's got all these conspiracy theorists saying that this never happened, I think they're going to get a rude awakening, because with Helen's blessing, we have exclusive video from Corey Comparatore's phone. She got the phone back from the FBI, and we actually have the video of Corey recording his final moments when shots were fired. So that is in this documentary. It's never been seen before. So I think besides, being a producer, this is more of a personal story for me, especially knowing that the grief and, what Helen's been going through, and also her girls. And think about it, a week after Corey's tragic death, it's Helen and Corey's anniversary. And then her daughter's getting married. So it's, she's going through a lot there. But I think anyone that's, listening right now, your viewers, people out in Fox Nation, it's a documentary like no other. I think, look, everyone's trying to do a Butler, assassination documentary. You see so many clips out there, so many documentaries, but This is going to be the raw, organic truth from people that were at the front line. And I think no one can tell that story better than the guys from Butler ESU. And you're going to see that in this documentary.
Wow. Okay. One last question for you guys. So I said at the outset, I think this is one of the biggest and most important stories of our lifetime. And my personal opinion has not received a proportionate level of coverage or inquisitiveness compared to other stories that come and go in the news cycle, including, for example, satisfactory answers, stories on who is Thomas Crooks, who was this would-be assassin. So I'm curious from both of you, I'll go to the sheriff and then to Franco, that over the past year, do you feel like you have understood and have answers to that question of who is Thomas Crooks?
Not at all. Not at all. I mean,
you said you
would
don't
think
know
somebody,
or not at all?
No, not at all. There's nothing. I mean, you would think the people that knew him best would come forward. Nobody has. Almost a year later. The investigation, there's nothing other than some materials in his room for making bombs. I don't know what was on his phone, if they even got into it, when they got into it. There's so many unanswered questions surrounding him and his life and, mental health, what,
Right.
Yeah. But no, nothing.
Franco?
Well, Will, I mean, that's the question everyone's asking, right? And honestly, it's one of the most frustrating parts of this story. What we know about Thomas Crooks is still very limited, in my opinion. And even nearly a year later, this is a young man with no prior criminal record, no history of violence, and yet he carried out one of the most brazen attacks on a presidential candidate. But what we do have in this documentary is we do have an investigative journalist by the name of Ken Silva, and we also have Judicial Watch Tom Fitton on this documentary. We do bring some important highlights on how the evidence obviously was handled after after he was deceased on that roof. And there is one thing in this documentary that we were able to retrieve, thankfully to Senator Chuck Grassley's offices. We have an x-ray of Thomas Crooks' body with bullet fragments still in his shoulder, and they cremated him. So to me, it's like, how is that even possible? So there's a lot of unanswered questions here, and hopefully in due time, and then hopefully, this documentary will answer some of those questions.
All right, the documentary is Butler Under Fire. Yeah, sure, Sheriff. Sure.
I was just saying three things. One, Butler Under Fire was a very powerful documentary. Fox allowed us, Franco, to show it at the Penn Theater, a historic theater in Butler. A couple hundred or more people came, 2 different shows. And I'm telling you, nobody moved. The entire 20-some minutes of that documentary, it was powerful. I was blessed. Franco showed me sort of a preview of the second documentary, and he told me it's even better than what I've seen. So I'm looking forward to watching the second part of the documentary. And third, I love watching your show. So that's it.
I appreciate that, Sheriff. Thank you very much. I appreciate both of you coming on, answering these questions. Franco, it does sound like something you can't miss. It's Butler Under Fire, The Search for Justice. It's available right now at foxnation.com. I can promise you, I don't give gratuitous compliments. I don't say things that I don't mean. I'll be watching this very, very soon. And I think everyone else should as well. Gentlemen, thank you both for being with me here today and for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.